what is the update you can share with our viewers on how many hostages have been released so far, and if you have a breakup of the Israeli nationals who've been released and also the foreign nationals who've been released?
Well, first of all, thank you for that as well. And this we've started this humanitarian pause on the 52nd day since Hamas came in and actually kidnapped these individuals. There are over 239 that were kidnapped in the first place. On the first 3 days, 14, 13, and 13, those are the numbers that I'm aware of Israeli citizens who have been freed. There are also another 17 foreigners who are also foreign workers here in Israel, working here in Israel, who were also freed, primarily from Thailand. Also, I believe there was a Nepalese as well amongst them.
Today, I believe, is the fourth day. Many are anxious to know if it will be the final day of or whether the truce will be extended. But today, on the fourth day, how many more are you expecting will be released?
According to the framework, they're talking up to 50. So altogether, I think that leaves another 13, 13, 14. I believe another 11, 10 or 11 that are supposed to be returned as well. Hopefully that'll happen. But let's bear in mind, we don't know exactly. There's a lot of psychological games going on right now. Hamas is trying to hold us to all sorts of games that they're playing with us. So we're not really sure yet what is going to be happening.
One of the concerns, one of the questions that's top of everyone's mind, including the families of these hostages who are yet to be released, is whether there will be an extension of this 4-day truce. Hamas, I believe, has put out a statement Sunday expressing an interest in extending this truce. I believe the Israeli Prime Minister's office has also welcomed it. What can you tell us about that? Will this 4-day truce, this temporary pause, possibly be extended by a few more days?
It's part of the framework that's being organized with foreign partners in this activity, such as Qatar, Egypt, and the United States, but primarily the Qatarim. The Qatar government is trying to move this framework forward. Extensions are part of this framework. We in the military are prepared to go along with whatever our political directives we get.
There are some folks who are expressing concern about the pause getting extended beyond 4 days. They say that the longer this pause, then more the chances that Hamas has the ability to regroup, to recover, and to possibly strike back again at Israel. What would you say to that?
We in the military have two specific goals. One is to bring back those Israelis who have been kidnapped over to Gaza by Hamas. And two is our other primary goal is to totally dismantle and create a situation where Hamas no longer has the ability to carry out the tragic events that took place on the 7th of October. The two of these we see going hand in hand. So if the political leadership decides to continue with this framework, which has already been agreed upon between us and the government, then we're prepared that it goes together with our primary goal of bringing home the hostages that have been kidnapped. Now, we need to remember that there are over 150 other Israelis still being held. And that is our job. It's our moral obligation to bring them home too.
But Major Baruch, therein lies a contradiction, doesn't it? On the one hand, you are saying that it is one of your primary objectives to get back everyone who's been kidnapped by Hamas, and yet at the same time, that is also a deterrent factor in carrying out your second objective, which is the complete destruction of Hamas. The longer those hostages are in Hamas custody, the more reined in Israel will have to be.
Once again, we have our primary goal, two goals: bringing back those civilians that have been kidnapped and also some of the soldiers that have been kidnapped. And we also have a goal of totally destroying Hamas. Now, whether that takes 1 week, 2 months, or whatever, our political leadership and our military leadership has that we're in this for the long run. We're going to take care of that, and we're prepared if we need to do that. That being said, That being said, we know that we're taking a risk here in letting them rebuild. However, it's calculated, and we know what we're doing. We have plans. We're taking advantage of this period as well as to rest up, redefine our tactical goals that we need to do in order to take the strategic goal of bringing back these civilians and also destroying Hamas's capabilities. So we know what we're doing.
Baruch,
we have
we'll leave
a plan,
it at that.
And we're going to be working.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll be in touch with you and the IDF as you progress through your operation in Gaza. Up next, we're going to decode this 4-day truce, because right now there is a delicate piece. Like I said, it's a temporary pause in the hostilities, a temporary truce in the fighting between Israel and Hamas. It's taken weeks of diplomacy to get here, but make no mistake about this, the Netanyahu government is facing immense pressure from the families of these hostages. They are saying that even if it means a scaling back of this war, the priority should be to get every single hostage out, Israeli or foreign national, who is still in Hamas captivity. I try and decode what are the options available before the Netanyahu government and this very real fear amongst strategic experts in Israel that if this pause of 4 days were to extend for another 4, another week, another 10 days, then that would be an opportunity for Hamas to regroup, to recover, and to strike back at Israel. So this is a long-form decode. I'll see you again tomorrow night, same time. A third group of hostages from the Gaza Strip have been freed by Hamas on Sunday. This includes a 4-year-old American girl whose parents were killed in the Hamas terror attack on Israel. After the third release on Sunday, more than 50 hostages have been released, and that raises the prospect that more captives could be set free amidst a fragile ceasefire. The 17 hostages released by Hamas on Sunday were seized when the terrorists raided Israel on the 7th of October. Among those released were 3 Thai nationals, 1 Russian, and the little American girl Abigail Edan. She's a dual American-Israeli citizen who was kidnapped from a kibbutz in the south. She marked her 4th birthday in captivity in Gaza on Friday. With both Israel and Hamas poised to resume the fighting, a collapse of the agreement might have quickly led to the resumption of hostilities. Those hostilities have already killed thousands of people. It might have also choked off desperately needed supplies for the besieged civilian population in Gaza. The first set of trucks carrying humanitarian aid made their way from Egypt into Gaza in these last few days as part of this ceasefire deal. But in an interesting twist, late Sunday, responding to an offer by Israel to add 1 extra day to the ceasefire for every 10 hostages that it released, Hamas said that it was interested in extending the ceasefire agreement. The Palestinian armed group said it was willing to extend this temporary ceasefire with Israel after the current 4-day pause in fighting is over. Israel too welcomed the offer. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a video statement soon after the Hamas offer. In that statement, he noted that there was already an outline for the possibility of freeing an additional 10 hostages for every day of peace. He also added that he welcomed an extension in this pause in hostility. In addition to the pause in the fighting, the deal, which was negotiated over the last many weeks by the United States, Qatar, and Egypt, included humanitarian aid for Gaza. There had been speculation over how smoothly the exchange of prisoners would proceed on Sunday after Hamas threatened to postpone the second round of hostages for prisoners trade. Hamas had claimed that Israel had reneged on parts of the agreement relating to humanitarian aid, but after many hours of delay on Saturday and on Sunday, the exchange went ahead late Sunday evening. President Joe Biden of the United States has said that the chances are very real that the pause could open the door to a longer ceasefire. Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani, whose country played a crucial role in these negotiations, told the Financial Times that the truce could be extended if Hamas was able to use this pause to try and locate additional hostages. Some of these hostages have been held by other armed groups, not necessarily Hamas. He said that more than 40 women and children were believed to be held captive in Gaza, not by Hamas, but by other jihadi groups. More than 240 hostages, a large number of them Israeli citizens, but also a significant number of foreigners, are said to be in custody in Gaza. Rough estimates also suggest there are around 8,000 Palestinians who are currently in Israeli jails. Israel released the latest batch of 39 prisoners as part of this exchange deal. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the country's troops in the Gaza Strip Sunday, 3 days into the pause in fighting. He vowed that Israel is going to continue until the end, until victory is achieved. It was not immediately clear exactly when or where Netanyahu conducted this visit. Information about that trip was withheld by the Israeli government until he left the Gaza Strip because of security reasons. It is likely that he traveled to the northern part of Gaza, where the Israeli military has established control. The trip was Netanyahu's first to Gaza since the Israeli ground invasion began more than a month and a half ago. He also became the first Israeli Prime Minister to go to Gaza in more than 20 years. Those who traveled with him included his national security advisor, his military secretary, and the Israeli military deputy chief of staff. There is extreme domestic pressure on the Netanyahu government to get the hostages released, even if that means scaling back the military operations in Gaza. A day after the first exchange of hostages and prisoners between Israel and Hamas, thousands of Israelis gathered in front of the central military headquarters in Tel Aviv. They wanted to keep the pressure on the government to prioritize the return of all the hostages instead of resuming the military action in Gaza. This is the fourth week in a row where we've seen demonstrations calling for the Netanyahu government to make the freeing of the hostages as its top priority. But it's not going to be simple. There are quite a few complications therein. A longer ceasefire will also increase diplomatic pressure on Israel not to resume the extensive bombarding that it's been indulging in of the Gaza Strip over the last 50 days. Time works against Israel. On the one hand, you want all the hostages out, knowing that you can't get them out militarily. On the other hand, Israel cannot afford to completely lose the momentum in this war. An Israeli military official said that the country was committed to freeing as many hostages as possible, but he also expressed concern that the longer this pause lasts, the more time Hamas has to build back capabilities and attack Israel again. If Israel decides to resume military operations, then Hamas may kill some hostages in retribution, and that is only likely to put further pressure on Netanyahu. It might also force the hand of the Israeli military into taking more brutal action in Gaza. Remember, Israel has been facing very harsh criticism in the last 50 days for the kind of pictures that have been coming out of Gaza, the bombardment of women, children, civilians who have nothing to do with Hamas, or this terror attack which started it all. Hamas can use this pause to easily buy at least another 10 to 20 more days of relief from the Israeli military, saying it's going to release more and more hostages. And this could give Hamas time to regroup and recover. The big problem for Israel is this, that the most important commanders of Hamas, the leadership of this terror group, which was directly responsible for the October 7th attacks, among them Yahya Sinwar and Mohammed Deif, are both believed to have fled to southern Gaza along with the fleeing millions. They are suspected to have mixed themselves along with the civilian population there, as well as some of the hostages. So far, Israel has not struck southern Gaza. It has kept its operations confined to northern Gaza. But in order to eliminate the Hamas leadership, which is one of the stated objectives of the Israeli military, they will have to inevitably go further south, and that means the possibility of more and more civilian casualties. Clearly, for Israel, this is a Hobson's choice. They are damned if you do and damned if you don't. That's not all. On Sunday, the Egyptian government also said that about 208 trucks had entered Gaza, including 7 trucks which were carrying about 100,000 liters of fuel. Later on Sunday, it also said another 100-odd trucks had entered, including 2 that were carrying fuel and 2 which had cooking gas. And that number of trucks is expected to increase as we enter the 4th day. Hamas and its allies have seized an estimated 240 hostages when they attacked southern Israel last month. The attacks, which were the worst on Israeli soil since at least the end of the Arab-Israeli War in the late 60s and the Yom Kippur War in the mid-70s, have killed over 1,000 Israelis, most of them civilians. In response, Israel has launched a massive air and ground operation over the last month and a half in which over 13,000 Palestinians have died.